Penny, for your thoughts on Labor Day, on unions, and how the American people have been trained into accepting scraps instead of joining union communities and fighting for our rights, and what that means today, where we see that the U.S. has become increasingly anti-human and pro-corporation. If you were to ask most people what Labor Day is about, you're going to hear things like cookout, sales, maybe the unofficial end of summer, or you might even hear that old rule about not being able to wear white after Labor Day.
You're not supposed to wear white after Labor Day.
Don't wear white after Labor Day?
I'm actually terrified of wearing white after Labor Day.
I wear white after Labor Day.
But that is not why it exists. Labor Day was born from wide-scale strikes from workers fighting, being beaten, and killed for demanding fair treatment and wages. It's not just a long weekend.
In Georgia, Governor Talmadge sets up concentration camps for strikers.
It's an entire cultural memory that we have fallen out of touch with. Part 1, the real history of Labor Day. The Pullman Company was a company in Chicago that built railroad cars. It's also a company town. In these company towns, workers had to live in company housing. They had to buy from company stores. They had to rent from their employer. Any money that was made was automatically going back to the employer. In 1894, during a really bad depression, the company's owners decided that the best idea to maintain their profits during the depression was to cut wages by 25%. Not only is cutting wages a problem, but they also didn't lower any of the rent or prices inside of the company town. So people got fed up, especially once people started starving and they went on strike. The American Railway Union joined in, and at its highest, there were 250,000 workers across 27 states that held a national strike and refused to handle any of the Pullman cars, which basically left all of the railroads choked up and paralyzed. There was no business as usual. They shut the system down, which caused the railroad executives and business leaders to lobby the Cleveland administration to jump in to intervene. The owners made the claim that the strikes were illegal and they were disrupting the delivery of the U.S. mail. So what they did was they leaned on judges and federal courts who issued orders to make the workers go back to their jobs. But when the workers decided that they weren't going to do that and they defied court orders, that basically gave Washington the excuse to escalate. President Grover Cleveland deployed over 12,000 federal troops and U.S. Marshals to Chicago. And the official excuse was that they were there to protect the mail, to enforce court orders, and to keep the trains moving. But the real reason they were out there was to break the strike and protect corporate interests. So violence eventually broke out between the troops and strikers, as they often tend to do in these situations where you have the state being leveraged against the people, which led to more than 30 workers being killed and a lot more were injured. The property damages went through the roof. There was hella public backlash against the government about the bloodshed and about the use of troops against citizens. This was a huge deal. And so to cool tensions and chill everybody out, Congress pulled out one of their oldest tricks in the book, and they rushed to pass legislation making Labor Day a federal holiday just days after the strike ended. It wasn't a nice gift from the bosses. It was basically the U.S. government waving a white flag to workers who had refused to stay quiet. When you go back and you actually watch footage from the earlier labor movements, it's so fascinating to see how the American worker have been neutered and propagandized into believing that protesting angrily and unionizing or stopping work isn't a form of protest that's acceptable. Because workers of the past did not shy away from using everything in their tool belt.
The labor movement introduces a new form of strategy, the sit-down strike. Workers occupy plants, refuse to move until a settlement is reached.
The conditions that workers throughout U.S. history were fighting against consisted of extremely brutal sweatshop conditions, extremely low wages, the right to work less than 56 hours a week, and banning child labor. When workers came together to demand better, they won that right to work less than 56 hours a week and those bans on child labor. They were hard-won rights, and every one of those we still rely on today. Weekends, overtime, safety laws, they came out of those fights. The irony about all of it is it was actually those wins that set the stage for what would become the so-called golden age of the American family. Part 2. The bubble years. When people talk about the good old days, they usually mean the nuclear family. You have your dad at work, you have your mom at home, you have the white picket fence and the kids in the suburbs with the dog. But here's the thing, that life wasn't the American tradition. It was actually just a bubble. It was a post-war accident that was inflated by unions, cheap housing, exclusionary government subsidies that mostly went to white families. For what was really only about a span of 25 years, one paycheck could buy a house, could cover welfare, could send kids to college. It was only about 25 years. That wasn't normal before the 1950s. Women have always been working. Children were always working.
148 persons, mainly women and children, are burned to death as a fire sweeps through the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory in New York City.
It wasn't normal before that, and it hasn't been normal since then. I feel like I need people to understand that era that so many people are romanticizing without relevant context of how it even became possible in the first place lasted for less time than South Park has been on the air. But when that bubble burst, more specifically, when unions got crushed, wages flatlined, jobs disappeared, corporations then pointed the finger everywhere but at themselves. They said feminism killed the family, divorce killed the family, culture killed the family. But the truth of it all, it was labor power, unions, and a pro-human, sympathetic president and his legislation that built that dream.
Over the years, FDR's convictions grow stronger that workers have rights which should be protected by law. In 1928, he becomes governor of New York.
I call for legislation to guard the toilers in the factory and to ensure them a fair wage and protection from the dangers of their trade.
And it was corporate power that destroyed it. Part 3, the collapse. By the mid-70s and early 80s, the engine that powered that dream was already running on fumes. You have corporate lobbying increasing, the protections that the New Deals offered are being stripped away. You have deindustrialization, shipping jobs overseas. Because wages stopped keeping up with the cost of living, despite productivity increasing 200%. These things aren't accidents. These were increasingly hostile anti-family policies that were being drafted, and lo and behold, healthcare, housing, and childcare start exploding in price. I feel like a really far out but totally relevant example to wrap your mind around this insidiousness is formula companies spending millions of dollars lobbying against paid parental leave policies, breastfeeding protection policies, because for them, every exhausted mom who is forced back to work before she is ready is another customer. The earlier they can get your child on formula, the sooner you are going to be a paying customer. Or how about the fact that there were large amounts of American higher education that was effectively free for most of the 20th century, especially for veterans, residents of New York, California, working class kids at state schools. College was publicly available. But again, with Reagan being that leading voice in canceling unions, Americans had their opportunities trimmed down and were given a chipping away of public investment and a push for privatization instead, and it killed those opportunities. Tuition skyrockets. That's not families first, that's billionaires first. Wherever you find really strong gains in the pro-corporate space, you will almost certainly also find presidential attacks on unions and anti-family legislation being drafted. When workers join together in union, they have the power to ask for better pay and benefits, and it works. But aggressive union busting and propaganda led to membership drops from 1 in 3 American workers being a part of a union in 1945 to only 1 in 10 being a part of one today. And it was with that collapse that we start to hear the death knell for the single income family life. By the time we got to the 90s, the American dream was already exceedingly out of reach for most people.
Remember the days when couples fought because the husband didn't want his wife to work, but she wanted her own career? Well, surprise, surprise. Today there is a new argument brewing. More and more women are saying that it's too much. They're not superwomen after all, and that they want to stay at home. Problem is, while fewer wives want jobs, more husbands want their wives earning paychecks. Is it fair for the man to be the sole supporter in the family in the 90s? Is that fair?
No. It's not. It's almost not possible.
Corporations cashed out, though. Families were once again left holding the bag. Part 4, families first, not billionaire. The good news is that lately more and more people are supporting unions and taking action to bring them back and make them stronger to protect workers in an increasingly anti-worker environment. Just this year alone, we've already seen victories. Fast food workers in California won a $20 an hour minimum wage. There was a judge who blocked Trump's attempt to bust federal unions. Kaiser Permanente healthcare workers held the line and won better wages and better staffing requirements that will keep patients safer. We're seeing more workers across industries, hospital staff, airport workers, state employees, childcare workers. We're seeing them unite under one demand. Families first, not billionaires, by way of healthcare for all, by way of fully funded public services, by way of taxing billionaires fairly, by way of creating safe workplaces. SEIU is one of the larger unions gaining steam in America with over 2 million members across different industries. They're advocating for having access to paid sick time and paid leave, earning at least $15 an hour and having access to quality, affordable healthcare, no matter where you work or what job you do, or whether or not you're currently employed. I remember my very first job was at McDonald's and I was like 15 and a half or 16. And I remember how hard they were going. Like if somebody's talking about a union, report them. And I couldn't understand because at that point in time, I didn't know what a union was. And as they were telling me, I remember thinking, well, that doesn't sound all that bad. But, you're a teenager. You don't know what's happening. And you're assuming that the adults that are telling you this have your best interests at heart. But, you live and you learn. Even though Labor Day has been watered down into mattress sale ads, long weekends, and barbecues, its roots were never about consumption. They were about solidarity. It's actually impossible to make America great in any way that doesn't involve supporting the working middle class. It just doesn't. The math ain't mathin'. The math doesn't math. States with more union workers tend to have better outcomes for everyone. Even if you are not a part of a union, it raises the standards for everyone else. People in states with high union participation are more likely to have health insurance. They're more likely to have access to Medicaid and paid sick and family leave. Union-strong states also do more to protect voting rights. Fewer voting suppression laws are passed in states that have high union membership. Every time workers gained an inch in the past, they've been told that they were asking for too much. The reality of the situation is the nuclear family on one paycheck was never the American tradition. It was the end result of labor's wins, and corporate America killed it. The only way forward is workers fighting together to win it back.
I seek definitely to increase the purchasing power of the American people. Your government hopes that the building up of wages and the shortening of hours will result in an increase in the number of persons employed. Workers are here given a new charter of rights, long sought and hitherto denied.
In 1894, workers risked everything for an 8-hour workday. In the 1940s and the 1950s, unions won wages that built the American dream. And in 2025, it is our turn. When we think about the issues of our time, the lack of health care, affordable housing, the lack of social support, stagnant wages, what would it look like to live in America where families actually came first? Even better exercise for you, what would it look like in America if it invested in families the way that it invests in billionaires? And what are we willing to do to make that a reality?
Our aim must be to achieve and maintain a national economy whose factors are so finely balanced that the worker is always sure of a job which will guarantee a living wage. The wage earners of America will not ask for more. They will not be satisfied with less.
Penny for your thoughts, friends, and I will see you in the next one.